100% grade R coverage, we must ensure that more than 50% of grade 12 learners must achieve 50% or more, especially in mathematics and physical science. We need also to increase the headcount enrollments in technical as well as in vocational education, as well as training colleges to 1.2 million learners. We have to increase also the percentage of university academic staffs with PhDs from the current 38% to more than 46% by 2019. All these actions which we need to achieve in education and skills target must also include, amongst others, that we need to establish a teacher knowledge testing system for feedback into training as well as support. We have to develop effective tools for monitoring class size, teacher posting, and absences. We need to develop also protocols on the secondment of sector specialists to work in technical and vocational education and training colleges. We have to ensure as well that technical and vocational education and training colleges lecturers are exposed to the workplace. Some of you will recall that last year the government indicated during the Youth Month that rural youth hubs have to be established, including in the 23 of the poorest districts of South Africa. We also indicated that the expanded public works program that is being championed by government must provide temporary work opportunities for the unemployed to ensure that more than 40% of our people employed on those projects will be young people. And very importantly, we reported that the Industrial Development Corporation, the IDC, in partnership with the NYDA and the Small Enterprise Finance Agencies, the SEFA, have ring-fenced about 2.7 billion rand over the next 5 years, especially for young people to take up opportunities in business. This is a demonstration that youth entrepreneurship must be located in the mainstream finance institutions of government, such as the IDC and SEFA. By the end of 2014, over 730 million rand was spent by government to support over 15,000 youth enterprises. I'm confident that the establishment of the Small Business Development Department by the President Zuma last year will further consolidate the expansion of youth entrepreneurship in our country. In the last financial year, the NYDA supported 1,043 micro and small youth enterprises to the tune of 29 million rand, as we have heard the testament of two of your colleagues. And furthermore, the NYDA has provided non-financial business development support to 62,990 young aspiring and established entrepreneurs. Again, the NYDA, in partnership with the Ministry of Higher Education and Training, also implements, as we have heard from the program director, the Solomon Mahlangu Scholarship Fund that was launched by our president in March of last year. This is aimed at the poor, rural youth in particular, who achieve academic excellence. This Solomon Mahlangu Scholarship Fund has dispersed more than 40 million rand and has helped 586 poor, mostly rural youth to access higher education in 2014 alone. There were also 3,370 new jobs that have been created and sustained through the economic development interventions. Almost 900,000 of our young people have been supported through our career guidance program. And a further 3,378 young people were also supported through the Youth Build program, which address, amongst others, the critical upskilling in technical fields such as tax artisans that our country so dearly need. You may be aware as well that 74 partnerships have been established with government, with the private sector and civil society, and over 86 million rand was mobilized and leveraged financial resources from third parties, including Prime Stars, the Department of Higher Education and Training, as I've said, the Department of Public Works, the Sector Education Training Authorities, the SETAs. The NYDA also continues to enroll the Second Chance Matric Rewrite program, which allows those who have failed, as Councillor Sibi has alluded to us, that you must not fail. But if you fail, we give you a second opportunity to rewrite and receive free revision of all subjects and scholars that have benefited in this particular regard. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Youth Service Program also provides opportunities for our young people to volunteer and to give back to their communities. There are various facets, various opportunities to volunteer, such as the Youth Build program, which was implemented by the NYDA in partnership with the Department of Human Settlements. This program in particular enrolls our youth who are unemployed in the building and construction of RDP houses or community amenities. We will work with all government departments to ensure that we participate in earmarking projects for purposes of the expanded public works program. There's a lot that this youth is doing. These are some of the achievements that have been made whilst acknowledging the magnitude of youth development in our country, which requires that we devise means to accelerate youth development in South Africa. We must revamp, ladies and gentlemen, youth policy, not because nothing was done in the past, even beyond the institutional mechanisms that all of us have adopted since 1994. We have to revamp the youth policy so that we can better position the youth of our country to accelerate even further youth development in the whole of the Republic of South Africa. However, our 20-year review, as you may recall, indicates that we have also made enormous strides in youth development in the past 2 decades of our democracy, even though these challenges still persist today. This alone shows the magnitude of the challenges that we have inherited from the system of apartheid in 1994. That is why, over the past 20 years of freedom and democracy, our country has given education the highest budget allocation, more than any other departmental budget vote. This will give meaning to our celebration of the Freedom Charter, in that we have drastically flanked and opened the doors of learning and culture to all our youth, irrespective of race and gender. You know that in 1994, about 150,000 African students were enrolled in higher education. In 2012, over 750,000 African students were enrolled, and such have increased, were reflected across the black majority in our country. Your government has given bursaries for higher education, have been increased from a paltry 21 million rand in 1994 to a whooping 8 billion rand in 2013. And that has been offered through the National Students Financial Aid Scheme, regardless of the challenges that NSFAS we won't talk about the challenges today. Matric pass rate has tremendously increased in South Africa, and has been reported by the Minister of Basic Education. We also reported last year that there has been a significant increase in education-related support that increased from 44,000 to 1.6 million, primarily in the form of career guidance and technical skills training. We have already said that vocational training will constitute a major intervention in South Africa, including the use of the sector education and training authorities, the SETAs. Whilst the Presidency Youth Development Program, as championed by Deputy Minister Manamela, will spearhead youth policy implementation throughout our country, we do expect that provincial as well as local government entities must likewise put up institutional mechanisms that will ensure the implementation of the National Youth Policy 2020. This must also be in line with our general conceptualization that youth development must permeate all areas of development in our country, and most certainly the integrated development plans. On the occasion of presenting the medium-term strategic framework last year, we indicated what our former president, our icon, Nelson Mandela, wrote to Adelaide Tambo in a letter from prison, and I want to quote this letter for its significance. Mandela said, "Significant progress is always possible if we ourselves plan every detail and allow intervention of fate only on our own terms. Preparing a master plan and applying it are two different things," close quotes. While this is true in our presentation of our programs in government as a whole, it is also true with regards the National Youth Policy 2020 that must inform a comprehensive youth development program in our country. Allow me to reiterate the fact that the Youth Employment Accord that was signed in 2013 by our government with organized labor and organized business, as well as communities and youth formations of our country, continues to offer a mass-based, collective, and realistic approach to accelerate job creation for all young South Africans. That accord aims to make a meaningful contribution to the creation of 5 million jobs by 2020, which without doubt must be monitored in the context of the National Youth Policy 2020. As we stipulated on that occasion of the medium-term strategic framework, in each of the outcomes and the goals that have been outlined, as well as the indicators and actions and responsibilities, these must be true for government in general and must also be true for the National Youth Policy 2020, especially in its implementation. In this way, we would have succeeded in mainstreaming youth development in the economic activities of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, as the saying goes, the devil is always in the detail. Likewise, the details in implementing the National Youth Policy 2020 will be clarified in the integrated youth development strategy that must spell out in detail how and by whom the actual implementation will be done. That is why when that MTSF was released, we said that in this context that will ensure that the rapid implementation of an integrated youth development strategy as a broad vehicle or tool towards the mainstreaming of youth development in our country. The priority areas of youth development are employment creation, entrepreneurship support, and education, especially skills development. And by rapidly absorbing our youth into the mainstream development of our country, we will have responded effectively to the fact that of the approximately 25% unemployed in South Africa, the vast majority are young people between the ages of 15 and 35 years. I want to encourage you to study this Youth Policy 2020 and see for yourselves the opportunities that are available to you for your own personal development as the youth of this beautiful country. As a government, we live by the adage entailed in the Freedom Charter, whose 60th anniversary we are celebrating this year. In that, there is no government that must gain authority unless it is based on the will of all its people. And similarly, we have not sought as a government to impose youth policy in South Africa, lest we repeat the mistakes of the past apartheid regime that sought to impose Afrikaans as a medium of instruction in our schools. That is why your government has always taken leaf from the youth themselves on how youth development must be conceptualized and spearheaded. From the days of the NYC up to the present, the youth of this country have always taken leadership on youth development policies in South Africa. The concept of an integrated youth development strategy was first agreed to by the youth themselves following the assessment that was done on youth development environment in South Africa that was commissioned by the NYC. Similarly, both the National Youth Policy 2009 to 2014 and the current National Youth Policy 2020 are all products of elaborate youth consultations that Deputy Minister Manamela and Yegen have been conducting. And as a government, we believe that the youth of this country have turned a corner in their conceptualization of youth development. This is more so because, unlike before, youth development will be central to government work as opposed to the periphery that it had occupied previously. It was consequently inconceivable that a mere 1 billion rand apportioned to the Umsobombu Youth Fund could radically advance youth development in our country, more so given the statistics that points out to the problems of youth unemployment, of poverty, of inequality as essentially a youth problem in South Africa. Therefore, it is our understanding that the NYDA must be limited to piloting projects that demonstrate what can be done, but that the bulk of the work must rightfully reside in all government departments and all spheres of government, the private sector as a whole. I want to challenge you as the youth of our motherland to assist in bringing about radical economic transformation in our country by taking steps to participate in personal economic developments. And once we have mainstreamed youth development, we will be able to report comprehensively across all fields of youth development, which must necessarily cover all areas of our country's economic development. The youth must be found in farming, in ICT, in the financial institutions, in the media, in engineering, in sports, in cultural activities, in fact, in all activities that constitute the economy of our country. That is why career guidance, as offered by the NYDA programs, is such an important tool for youth development so that we can be able to maximize the potentials of the youth of our country. Over 1.2 million young people have received information on self-development through the 26 operational centers of the NYDA. An additional 938,000 young people have also received career guidance, and has become the slogan that we too emphasize and which I want to say today, uzoyithola anjani uma uhleli ekhoneni. Allow me to take this opportunity to thank the thousands of our young people who have participated in the formulation of the National Youth Policy 2020. Past generations have defined their epochs, and the onus is on you to shape your own future, and the future for posterity is in your hands. Like the generation of Seme in 1912, and the generation that drafted the Freedom Charter here in Soweto in 1955, as well as the generations of Dan Monsensi, Tsietsi Mashinini and others of 1976, you too must define what becomes your main challenge in this current epoch. I have no doubt that the National Youth Policy 2020 is your direct response to this challenge, and hence we are obligated as a government to help you champion your own development cause in this context. As I conclude, allow me to reiterate the message that we have expressed following the recent violence against foreign nationals. I need not remind you that we are Africans before the colonial masters divided us according to their colonial schemes. That is why we stood in solidarity against colonial rule and apartheid as Africans in Africa. Therefore, xenophobia has no place both in our history and in our future. We call on each and every one of you to help stop that barbarism and banish such hatred from every corner of our beautiful land. As a government, we will continue to monitor the situation through the Interministerial Committee on Migration, which our President established. The first purpose was encouraging intra-African trade, investment, tourism, cultural exchanges that mutually benefit our various African countries. Finally, I thank you for being here today, and working together, we will successfully champion youth development in our country. I thank you. Ngiyabonga. Enkosi, ngiyalibonga.
Another round of applause for our minister. Thank you so much, Ntate Khatebe. I hope you have listened. We need to study and study and study so that we too can come one day and stand here and speak about posterity, intrantoni, and paramount importance. I hope you have listened. Having said this, as a program director, I think I have the power given upon me to cut the program short or elongate it. But I don't want to abuse my power. I am going to say thank you to our minister and try to just compress our program call upon the executive chairperson or deputy executive chairperson of NYDA, of course, if the DM do allow us to do that, because he is our DM. Before I even go there, I think we must thank the DM for crisscrossing the country, making sure that the national youth policy that the minister was speaking about becomes a reality. That product is a product of consultation processes that took place in the whole country. Whether you agree or you don't agree, the deputy minister have made sure that he listens so that he can capture the ideas of young people, so that the national youth policy shouldn't just only be about what he thinks, but it should be about the aspiration of young people in the country. So we must thank him for the work that he has done. I think we need to give him a round of applause. Ntate Morolong, you can come and give us vote of thanks. Thank you. Before I forget, can I ask him to show us his socks? I think you will definitely love them.
Hey, young people, hey, hey, young people, hey, we are the future. No one can stop us. We are the future. No one can stop us. No one can stop us. No one can stop us. Roar, young lions, roar. Roar, young lions, roar. Program director, distinguished guests, distinguished young people, ladies and gentlemen, I have been given a very easy task to perform, and that is to render a vote of thanks. Allow me to do so by thanking all of you who have made a resounding success of this event. Allow me to also break with convention and express our gratitude to our over-illustrious colleague, a sister of mine, our program director, for successfully steering the ship today. You continue to acquit yourself diligently as one of the most outstanding young leaders this country has ever had. We're also very privileged to have so many of our political principals here today. It is unprecedented. Your presence here is a response to an admonishment of the late president of the ANC, Oliver Tambo, that a country, a nation, a people, a movement that does not value its youth does not deserve its future. Our deepest appreciations goes to Honorable Minister of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Mr. Jeff Radebe, for such profundity of speech, which is indicative of the depth of our government in addressing social challenges facing young people. Can you give me a round of applause? Honorable Deputy Minister Rejoice Mabudafasi, we have heard you, Mama. We have heard you, Mbogodo. Your message of support was, as young people would say, on point. We thank you for the encouraging words, and we will continue in our relentless efforts to make sure that we engender in our young people a deep sense of patriotism. Honorable Deputy Minister Manamela, we thank you for leading from the front. We thank you for your hands-on approach. We thank you for placing at the epicenter of government's agenda youth development. We also thank you for gracing this occasion. Honorable MEC Panyaza Lesufi, your passion for the development of this country's youth will never go unnoticed. We thank you for your presence, and we convey our appreciation to the Gauteng government for being such a good host. We thank you for welcoming us to the biggest township in Africa. We share with you in your grief with regard to matters of football. Mr. Dan Muntiti, June 16 Foundation representative, we thank you, Comrade Dan Muntiti, and the entire June 16 Foundation, and we pay homage to your foundation, which represents a generation of gallant freedom fighters. You too fought fearlessly. You are a decorated freedom fighter. You and many others, including Ziezi Mashinini, Seth Mazibuko, Hector Peterson, have built yourself a permanent residence in our hearts. The struggle of the class of 1976 will never be in vain. We undertake to carry this baton with dignity and honor, and we vow to never betray our generational mission. We thank you for your presence. Councillor Msibi, Comrade Councillor, you have been a good host. Your ward is undoubtedly the wealthiest in terms of the history of the liberation struggle engineered by young people themselves. We thank you for your hospitality. Mr. Yeshen Pillay, under your sterling leadership, another successful Youth Month launch takes place at the Hector Peterson Memorial. The NYDA board, under your stewardship, continues to turn the tide. But for as long as 13 million young South Africans are discouraged job seekers and not economically active, the task ahead remains daunting. We thank you, Chair of Young People, and we thank all NYDA board members present here today. We thank you for outlining the Youth Month activities. Ms. Ntokozo Nkanyane, Soweto beneficiary, and Mr. Sfiso Ngobeze, we thank you for both sharing with us your experience with the NYDA. Your stories and many others speaks volumes about the NYDA and its continued ability to effect tangible change in the lives of ordinary young South Africans. We also extend our appreciations to all other distinguished guests who are here today, amongst them Comrade Matome Chilwane, ANC Youth League Provincial Chairperson, former Deputy Chairperson Comrade Simon Molefe, and the entire leadership of the Youth League, SAIC, YCL, SASCO, and COSAS, and other Progressive Youth Alliance and other progressive youth formations present here today. The Congress Youth League and the Progressive Youth Alliance represent, in terms of history, a fountain and reservoir of young revolutionary Democrats who truly changed the course of South African history. We thank you. We also thank our performers today. Soweto Move Project, the duo, our poet Mandisa Vundla, Self-Made Cheese. Let's give them a round of applause. We congratulate our NYDA officials led by Katura Mukumba, our CEO, your communications team, and our entire staff complement for pulling off an excellently arranged event. We thank you. We thank members of the media and other stakeholders for having graced us with their presence today. Lastly, to the youth of South Africa, we thank you for your discipline. This was truly a fitting tribute to the class of 1976. As we usher our country into a historic youth month, former President Nelson Mandela reminded us in 1996, on the occasion of Youth Day, that we owe it to the youth who perished in struggle in June 16, and in many years that followed, to ensure that we have achieved that which we have set ourselves to create a better life for all South Africans. I thank you.
1 2 1 2 1 2.
Ladies, if you down with me, put them up in the air.
Can everybody say, whoa, no, no. Whoa, no, no. Whoa, no, no. Okay. Hold it, selector. Hold it, selector. Hold it, selector. Okay, when we say NY, y'all say DA. NY. NY. When we say NY, y'all say DA. NY. NY. The students. So it's when you put your hands on the air like that. Everyone put your hands on the See himself, baby. Give me this. Give me this and next. That's the freestyle, baby. It's the freestyle, baby. One, two, three. Everybody say NYDA. Make things happen for the youth of USA. Hey, and then you just get truth of everybody say NYT. Say you make things happen for the youth of SA. Youth of SA. Yeah, we live in the truth in SA. We belong in the sky. Skin Martina will teach you how to fly. Heavy looking fly with the limitless youth of SA. You live in the truth of SA. Focused, too passionate to bear. Too smart and ambitious to fail. We're gonna fail. We're gonna good. We're God. Please get for the street. This what we do.
Daddy taught me how to use it.
Big enough for sure. Let's try to pour more. So big on my thing. I'm limitless. I'm timeless. 1, 2, 3. Everybody say NYT.